Hello families, welcome to Tales by Felix, where every story opens the door to a new world. Don't forget to subscribe, it would really mean the world to us. Now, let's begin. The morning sun in Port Harcourt was already hot enough to make the zinc rooftops shimmer. Chinyere Okafor, Chi-Chi, to everyone who knew her, was crouched on a plastic chair, balancing a tray of chin-chin and puff-puff samples on her lap. The party wasn't due to start until noon, but she was double-checking everything, from the balloons tied awkwardly to the dusty compound gate to the small DJ stand a young boy was setting up. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it at first, thinking it was one of her assistants asking about drinks. But when it buzzed again, and again, she sighed and swiped. "Hello, Chi-Chi," came the deep, stern voice of her landlord, Mr. Ibim. Her heart sank. "Good morning, sir," she replied softly. "There's nothing good about this morning. You know what today is." Chi-Chi closed her eyes. She knew exactly what day it was. The day her overdue rent for both her family's shop and their flat expired. "Sir, No excuses," he cut in. "You people have been owing me for months. You think I'm running a charity?" She swallowed hard. "Sir, just give me until next week. I have 2 weddings lined up, and 1 birthday party today. Money will come. I'll pay you, I swear." Silence. Then his voice, low and sharp. "Have until Friday, Chi-Chi. If I don't see my money, your things will be on the street." No story. The line went dead. For a moment, she sat frozen, the tray of snacks wobbling on her knees. The chatter of children in the compound faded. All she could hear was the dull throb of fear in her chest. Her mother's words from the night before replayed in her head. "Chi, you are our last hope. If you give up, we all scatter." She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, "I won't give up. Not yet." 3 days later, Chi-Chi sat behind the counter of their small, fading event planning office in D-Line. The office was little more than a partition shop, with peeling posters of past events taped to the walls and the faint smell of fried akara drifting in from the roadside. She was scribbling numbers in a ledger, trying to make sense of how she could possibly cover rent, when a shadow fell across the glass door. A black SUV, sleek as midnight, had pulled up outside. The tinted window slid down, revealing a man in a fitted suit, dark glasses perched on his nose. He stepped out. He wasn't flashy like the usual Port Harcourt big boys. His movements were measured, almost military. "Are you Miss Okafor?" he asked in crisp English. "Yes," Chi-Chi said, her voice small. "My principal requests a meeting with you," he said, handing her a card. The letters gleamed in embossed gold, Okoro Holdings. Her brows furrowed. "For what kind of meeting?" "A private event. Very unusual. He prefers to explain in person." She hesitated. Every alarm bell in her head screamed scam, ritualist, trouble. But the card felt heavy, real, expensive. And she was desperate. "Where and when?" she asked. "Tomorrow. 8 p.m. Presidential Suite, Le Méridien Hotel." He turned without another word, climbed into the SUV, and drove off, leaving her clutching the card like it was both a lifeline and a death sentence. Le Meridian's lobby gleamed with polished marble floors and chandeliers that looked like floating crystals. Chi-Chi felt painfully out of place in her neatly ironed Ankara gown and borrowed high heels. The receptionist directed her upstairs. Her palms were sweating as she pressed the elevator button, her heart pounding in her ears. When the door to the penthouse suite opened, she froze. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling glass window was a man she had only ever seen in newspapers and business blogs, Jide Okoro. Billionaire tech mogul. The man whose app empire had reshaped e-commerce in Nigeria. He turned. His face was chiseled, his eyes unreadable, like deep wells of silence. "Miss Okafor," he said smoothly, gesturing to a seat. She sat, gripping her handbag like a shield. He wasted no time. "I need a wife." Chi-Chi almost choked. Excuse me?" "Not a real wife," he clarified, his tone flat. "A public one. For 6 months. Enough to satisfy certain stakeholders. You'll be well compensated." She blinked at him, stunned. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking?" Her throat was dry. "Why me?" "Because," he said, leaning forward, You are not from my world. No one will suspect you. You're unknown enough to be believable, yet strong-willed enough to keep up appearances. And because, his lips curved slightly, you need money. The bluntness stung, but he wasn't wrong. What exactly are you asking me to do? Appear with me in public. Play the role of a devoted wife. Smile for the cameras. In return, you will receive $1 million. Chi-Chi's jaw dropped. $1 million? Her entire life savings barely scratched $1 million naira. I don't even know you, she stammered. You don't need to, he said, leaning back. All you need to know is that this is business. Nothing more. The next morning, Chi-Chi sat in her family's cramped living room, the marriage contract spread across the table. Her uncle, a retired lawyer, adjusted his reading glasses as he scanned the pages. No intimacy, he read aloud. No disclosure. Term, 6 months. Compensation, $1 million, payable upon successful completion. Her mother clasped her hands together. Chi, are you sure about this? It sounds dangerous. Her father coughed from his armchair. Dangerous? It sounds like slavery. What kind of man buys a wife? It's not buying, Chi-Chi said quickly. It's like acting. Pretending. We need the money, Papa. If we don't pay the landlord this week, we'll be thrown out. Her uncle sighed. The contract is airtight. He's protected himself from every angle. But, so are you. If he breaches it, you can sue him. Honestly, I've seen worse deals. Silence filled the room. Finally, her mother whispered, Chi, if you do this, you must promise us one thing. What? Don't lose yourself in it. Remember who you are. Chi-Chi nodded, though her heart trembled. Later that night, she signed her name at the bottom of the contract, her hand shaking. As the ink dried, she realized she had just traded her freedom for survival. 2 weeks later, the transformation was complete. Chi-Chi stood in front of a mirror in a borrowed Vera Wang gown, her hair swept into an elegant bun. The woman staring back at her was unrecognizable, a far cry from the struggling planner of D-Line. Ready? Jide's voice came from behind. She turned. He was flawless in his tuxedo, every inch the billionaire groom. At the gala, the cameras flashed like fireworks. The elite of Port Harcourt turned to stare as Jide Okoro entered with a mystery woman on his arm. This is my fiancée, Chinyere Okafor, Jide announced smoothly, his hand resting possessively on her back. Gasps rippled through the hall. Chi-Chi forced a smile, though her heart hammered. Within hours, the internet exploded. Twitter was ablaze with hashtags. Hashtag Jide and Chi-Chi, hashtag Billionaire Bride, hashtag From Nowhere to Everywhere. A paparazzi video of Jide whispering something in her ear, and her laughing nervously, went viral on Instagram. Back in the limo, Chi-Chi slumped against the seat, exhausted. You did well, Jide said simply. She let out a shaky laugh. I feel like I just stepped into another planet. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Get used to it. This is your life now. And as the city lights of Port Harcourt glittered outside, Chi-Chi realized her life had changed forever, whether she was ready or not. Chi-Chi never thought silence could feel so loud. The first night in Jide's mansion, she wandered through the wide hallways like a child lost in a museum. Marble floors stretched endlessly beneath her bare feet. Chandeliers glittered overhead. Walls were adorned with million naira art pieces she couldn't pronounce. It was suffocating. Her room, no, her suite, was bigger than her entire family flat in D-Line. The bed was so soft she sank into it, almost afraid she might drown in its luxury. But it wasn't home. The staff, though polite, eyed her with thinly veiled curiosity. The head maid, Madame Grace, had pressed her lips tight when Jide introduced Chi-Chi as Madam. Do you need anything, Ma? Grace had asked, voice stiff. Chi-Chi had smiled nervously. No, thank you. Later that evening, she joined Jide for dinner in the cavernous dining hall. A long table stretched between them, lined with gold cutlery and dishes she didn't recognize. Eat, he said simply, cutting into his steak. She picked at her food. This is a lot. His eyes flicked up. What is? This house. The staff. The attention. I feel like an actress on the wrong stage. Jide set down his fork. That's exactly what you are. An actress. And you need to perform. His words stung, but she forced a nod. That night, lying alone in her oversized bed, Chi-Chi whispered to herself, "Don't forget who you are. Don't let this place swallow you." The following week, at an exclusive yacht party on the Bonny River, Chi-Chi met her first true adversary. She had just stepped onto the deck, her gold dress shimmering under the sunset, when a woman's voice sliced through the air. "Well, well, well. So this is the new Mrs. Okoro." Chi-Chi turned. The woman was breathtaking, tall, poised, draped in a crimson gown that hugged her curves. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Dara Akinwumi," Jide said coolly, his expression unreadable. Chi-Chi had heard the name. Everyone in Port Harcourt's elite knew her, a businesswoman with connections in oil and politics, Jide's on-again, off-again lover. Dara extended a manicured hand to Chi-Chi. "You must be Chinyere, was it? Event planner from D-Line? What a fairy tale rise." Chi-Chi forced a smile. "Yes. And you are?" Dara's laugh was like champagne bubbles. "Oh, darling, I'm the woman Jide always comes back to." Jide's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The rest of the evening was a battle of veiled insults. Dara's friends whispered behind their cocktails, their eyes darting toward Chi-Chi. Every move she made, every word she spoke, was dissected. Later, as the yacht docked, Chi-Chi leaned close to Jide. "She hates me." "She hates losing," Jide corrected. But Chi-Chi saw the flicker in his eyes. The past wasn't as dead as he pretended. One night, a heavy storm lashed against the mansion windows. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the house into darkness. Chi-Chi found Jide in the study, a flashlight casting shadows across his face. He was sipping whiskey, staring out at the rain. "You don't look like the kind of man who gets fazed by power outages," she teased, trying to lighten the mood. He chuckled, an unexpected sound, low and warm. "You'd be surprised. I grew up in this city too, remember? I know Nipa better than anyone." She sat across from him. For once, the cold armor in his eyes seemed to soften. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked quietly. "Tired of what?" "Carrying all this. The money. The power. The eyes watching you everywhere you go." He was silent for a long time. Then he said, almost to himself, "Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it." Her brows knit. "Worth what?" He swirled the whiskey in his glass. "The mistake. The one that cost me everything." There was a shadow in his eyes, something deep and unspoken. Before she could ask, the lights flickered back on. His expression shuttered instantly, the mask snapping back into place. "Good night, Mrs. Okoro," he said briskly, standing and walking out. Chi-Chi sat alone, unsettled. For the first time, she'd glimpsed the man beneath the billionaire, and it scared her. The next day, Chi-Chi was in the study, organizing files for an upcoming public appearance. She accidentally knocked over a folder, scattering papers across the floor. As she bent to pick them up, her hand brushed against a small, hidden drawer. Inside was a photo frame. She froze. The photo showed Jide, younger, smiling with a woman beside him. Her beauty was striking, but what shocked Chi-Chi was the resemblance. The woman looked eerily like her. Her chest tightened. Who was she? Jide's voice made her jump. "What are you doing?" She quickly placed the frame back. I dropped something." He strode over, his eyes darkening as he saw the photo. For a moment, his carefully built composure cracked. "Don't touch my things," he said harshly, snatching the frame. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Stay out of this room unless I tell you otherwise." His voice was cold, final. Chi-Chi's throat ached with unspoken questions. Who was that woman? Why did she look like her? And why did Jide guard the memory so fiercely? That night, she lay awake, the image burning in her mind. She had stepped into Jide's world as an actress, but now she realized she was playing a role she didn't fully understand. By the end of the month, the stakes of their arrangement became terrifyingly clear. Jide invited Chi-Chi to a high-level business dinner at a government lodge in Port Harcourt. The room was filled with ministers, oil magnates, and power brokers. The air reeked of money and ambition. "This is it," Jide whispered as they entered. "The contract that will expand Okoro Holdings nationwide. If I win, everything changes. If I lose—" He didn't finish. At the head of the table sat Chief Obiora, Jide's uncle. The man's eyes glittered with malice as he spotted them. "So," the chief drawled loudly, "my dear nephew brings us a wife from the streets to impress Abuja." Laughter rippled around the table. Chi-Chi's cheeks burned, but she kept her head high. She leaned close to Jide, whispering, "Smile. Don't let him see he got to you." For the first time, Jide's lips curved in genuine amusement. Throughout the dinner, Chi-Chi played her role flawlessly, charming ministers' wives, holding her own in subtle jabs, and proving she was no pushover. By the end of the evening, whispers circulated, "Maybe she's not just a pawn. Maybe she's an asset." Back in the car, Jide turned to her. His voice was quiet, but there was admiration in it. "You surprised me tonight." Chi-Chi smirked, exhausted but proud. "What did you expect? I may be from D-line, but I know how to fight." For the first time, Jide's eyes softened, not with calculation, but with something dangerously close to respect. And as the night deepened over Port Harcourt, Chi-Chi realized this contract marriage wasn't just business anymore. It was war. The annual governor's ball was the crown jewel of Port Harcourt's social calendar. Politicians, oil executives, and business moguls all gathered in one glittering hall at the government house. Jide walked in with Chi-Chi on his arm, cameras flashing from every angle. Chi-Chi had practiced her smile in the mirror for hours, but her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her clutch. She knew she didn't belong in this world. And Dara knew it too. Halfway through the night, Dara struck. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice ringing like a silver bell. She stood at the center of the hall, a microphone in hand, her crimson dress a weapon of elegance. "Our dear Chinyere Okafor, Jide's lovely fiancée, has graciously agreed to share a few words about her journey from humble beginnings to, well, this." Gasps and chuckles rippled through the room. All eyes turned to Chi-Chi. Her throat dried up. Dara was setting her up for failure. Everyone knew it. She wanted Chi-Chi to stumble, to reveal herself as unworthy of the billionaire's world. Jide's jaw tightened beside her. He leaned close, his whisper sharp, "You don't have to do this." But Chi-Chi lifted her chin. If she backed down now, she'd always be the nobody. She stepped forward, taking the mic. For a moment, silence reigned. Then she spoke, her voice steady, carrying across the hall. "Yes, I am from D-line," she began, eyes sweeping the crowd. "I grew up with NEPA blackouts, flooded streets, and landlords who don't care if you eat as long as you pay rent. But that life taught me something money can't buy: resilience. The ability to create joy out of nothing. To plan a wedding with 200 guests when the budget is only for 20. To fight for your family with everything you have." The crowd was silent, hanging on her every word. And maybe that's why Jide chose me. Not because of my bank account or my last name. But because when the lights go out, and they always do in this country, I don't fall apart. I light a candle and keep going. A beat of silence. Then applause erupted. Even some of Dara's closest allies clapped reluctantly. Dara's smile faltered, her plan backfiring spectacularly. That night, a video of Chi-Chi's speech went viral on Instagram, captioned, "From D-line to diamonds, Jide's fiancé silences the haters." For the first time, Chi-Chi realized she wasn't just surviving this game, she was winning. But victory was short-lived. The next morning, Chi-Chi couldn't get the photo of the mysterious woman out of her mind. She finally confronted Jide in his study. "Who is she?" she demanded, holding up the photo frame she had found earlier. His face went rigid. "Put that down." "No." Her voice cracked. "You can't keep treating me like I'm just some actress in your script. Who is this woman, and why do I look like her?" For a long time, Jide said nothing. Then he sank into his chair, his shoulders heavy. "Her name was Adora," he said at last, his voice hollow. "She was my fiancée." Chi-Chi's heart pounded. "She died 3 years ago. Car accident." "At least," That's what they called it. But I know better. His hands clenched into fists. Her brakes were tampered with. My uncle orchestrated it. He wanted me broken, out of the way. And he succeeded. Chi-Chi's chest ached. And me? Why me? Jide's eyes met hers, haunted. Because you look like her. I didn't mean to notice it, but when I saw you that day, it hit me like a ghost standing in front of me. And I thought, maybe if I had someone who looked like her by my side, my enemies would reveal themselves. Maybe they'd make the same mistake twice. Her stomach dropped. So I was bait. The words hung between them like poison. Yes, he admitted, his voice breaking. At first. But, he stopped himself. Chi-Chi's eyes stung with tears. All this time, she thought she was at least a partner in this charade. But she was just a pawn. I don't know what's worse, she whispered. That you lied to me, or that I actually believed you saw me. She walked out before he could answer, her chest burning. Chi-Chi didn't speak to Jide for days. She buried herself in planning smaller community events, anything to keep her mind occupied. But deep down, she couldn't shake the truth. If what he said was real, Edoora hadn't died by accident. And now, Chi-Chi herself was in danger. Late one night, she found Jide in the garden, staring at the city lights in the distance. For the first time, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a broken man. She cleared her throat. If what you told me is true, then we can't keep pretending. Your uncle won't stop until he's destroyed you. He turned to her, surprised. You believe me? I don't know what I believe. But I know this, if your enemy's killed once, they can kill again. And if I'm your bait, then I have a right to fight back. For the first time in weeks, his lips curved into something almost like gratitude. You're braver than I thought, Chi. She shrugged, forcing a small smile. I didn't survive D-Line by being timid. And so, unlikely as it seemed, they formed an alliance. Their fake marriage wasn't just about appearances anymore. It was about uncovering the truth. Chi-Chi's plan was simple. Use her street smarts and connections to dig where Jide's polished lawyers couldn't. She started in Rumyu Okoro, where an old contact owed her a favor. A former Okoro Holdings driver, Emeka, had vanished after Adoora's death. Through whispered exchanges in dingy bars and discreet cash handoffs, she tracked him down to a rundown flat in Diobu. When she knocked, a man with sunken eyes opened the door. Who are you? He asked suspiciously. I'm a friend of Edoora, she lied. I know what happened wasn't an accident. His eyes widened, but before he could speak, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the stairwell. 3 men appeared, their faces hard, their intentions clear. Madam, you need to leave, Emeka hissed, shoving her back. The men advanced. One of them sneered, some people don't know when to stop asking questions. Chi-Chi's heart thundered. She bolted down the stairs, the men chasing her through the narrow alleys of Diobu. Her lungs burned, her heels slipping on the wet ground. Just when she thought they'd catch her, a Kiki screeched to a halt in front of her. The driver yelled, Enter, madam. She leapt in, the Kiki tearing off as the men cursed behind them. By the time she stumbled back into the mansion, her clothes torn and her face pale, Jide was waiting. What the hell happened? He demanded, gripping her shoulders. She was shaking too hard to answer. But one thing was clear, they were getting close, and someone wanted her silenced. The next day, Jide and Chi-Chi tracked down Emeka again, this time with better precautions. They found him hiding in a mechanic's shop on the outskirts of town. With Chi-Chi's persistence and Jide's promise of protection, Emeka finally broke down. I didn't want to be part of it, he said, his voice trembling. But your uncle, he paid me to tamper with Adoora's car. I thought it was just to scare her, not kill her. When she died, he gave me money to disappear. Jide's fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. He killed her, he whispered. My own blood killed her. Emeka's eyes darted between them. And now he knows you're digging. He won't hesitate to do the same to this new girl. He gestured toward Chi-Chi. If you love your life, madam, walk away now. But Chi-Chi lifted her chin. I'm not walking away. Not until this is over. For the first time, Jide looked at her with something raw and unguarded. Not as bait. Not as a pawn, but as a partner. The war had begun, and they were in it together. The boardroom at Okoro Holdings was thick with tension. Oil magnates, government representatives, and shareholders filled the polished mahogany table. The atmosphere was cutthroat. This was the day the government would decide which company received the coveted nationwide infrastructure contract. Jide entered, sharp in a navy suit, Chi-Chi at his side in an emerald gown that made her look like royalty. Whispers spread like wildfire. The fiancé was here too. At the head of the table sat Chief Obiora, Jide's uncle, smug as ever. "Nephew," he drawled, "I hope you've prepared to lose gracefully. This table doesn't reward sentiment." His eyes flicked to Chi-Chi. But Jide was calm. When it was his turn to present, he stood tall. His pitch was flawless: economic strategy, technological innovation, and community development. Then, with a calculated pause, he clicked the remote. A screen lit up. Emails, bank statements, testimonies, and finally, a recorded confession from Emeka. "I was paid by Chief Obiora to tamper with Adaora's brakes," the voice rang out in the silent room. "It wasn't an accident. It was murder." Gasps filled the air. Faces turned, eyes narrowing at the chief. Obiora's face drained of color. This is nonsense," he barked. "Lies." But the evidence was undeniable. The ministers shifted uneasily. The shareholders whispered. Jide's voice cut through the chaos. "You killed my fiancé to cripple me. But today I rise. And you fall." Obiora lunged across the table, but security restrained him. By the time the meeting ended, the decision was clear. Okoro Holdings had secured the contract. Obiora's empire was crumbling. The morning after the victory, the mansion felt strangely hollow. Chi-Chi sat on the edge of her bed, the contract in her hands. 6 months. That was the deal. And now, it was over. Jide knocked softly before entering. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, but his gaze softened when it fell on her. "It's time," she said quietly, holding up the document. He nodded. "You've kept your end of the bargain. You saved me." "I hope I kept my promise to save you." Her throat tightened. "You gave me more than money, Jide. You gave me a new version of myself." Silence hung heavy between them. The unspoken truth was there, lingering in the space they dared not cross. They had fallen for each other. But instead of admitting it, Chi-Chi packed her things. When she left the mansion, it felt like leaving behind another life. The driver carried her bags. She didn't look back, afraid her heart would shatter if she saw him watching. 4 days afterward, she threw herself into rebuilding her family's business. They moved into a better shop, her parents finally smiled again, and the landlord stopped calling. By every measure, she had won. And yet, her nights were empty. A week later, Chi-Chi received an unexpected call. "Turn on Channels TV. Now." It was her cousin. She rushed to the living room, switching on the screen. A live press conference was underway. Jide stood at the podium, flanked by government officials. He had just signed the biggest deal of his career. The hall roared with applause. But then, he raised a hand. "There's one more thing I need to say." The cameras zoomed in. "My marriage to Chinyere Okafor began as a business arrangement. A contract. I thought I was being clever, protecting myself, manipulating appearances." His voice wavered. "But somewhere along the way, I realized she wasn't just saving my image. She was saving me. She taught me what resilience looks like, what love looks like, what life looks like beyond money and power. And I can't let her walk away without telling the truth." The hall buzzed. Reporters scribbled furiously. "I love her," he said, steady now. "Not as part of a contract. Not as bait. But as the woman who changed everything." Gasps filled the hall. Twitter erupted instantly, hashtags flooding, hashtag Jide confesses, hashtag love beyond contracts, hashtag Chinyere forever. Chi-Chi's phone exploded with calls. She sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. He had told the world everything. The next day, Jide showed up outside Chi-Chi's shop. No SUV convoy, no bodyguards, just him in a simple shirt, looking strangely vulnerable. The staff and customers stared in awe as the billionaire entered the modest space. Chi-Chi folded her arms, heart pounding. "You had no right to announce that on live TV." "I had no choice," he replied. "I couldn't let you think you were just a pawn. Not anymore." Her eyes welled. "Do you know what you did? You exposed me to the whole country. People are laughing, calling me a gold digger, a fraud." "Let them talk," he cut in, his voice firm. "I don't care what they say. I care about you. The question is, do you care about me?" The room went silent. Even her staff stopped pretending to work. Chi-Chi's heart warred with her mind. He had lied to her, used her. But he had also bared his soul to millions, risking his reputation in a way no billionaire ever would. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I don't know if I can trust you." "Then let me spend the rest of my life proving it," he whispered. She turned away, trembling. Freedom was finally hers. But love, real, raw, terrifying love, was staring her in the face. Months later, the city buzzed with excitement. Not about politics or oil deals, but about a groundbreaking ceremony in Okoro. Chi-Chi stood at the front, dressed in a simple but elegant gown. Behind her rose the framework of a new community project, a sustainable event center, funded by Jide but designed by her. It was a dream she'd never dared to imagine. The crowd cheered as Jide joined her on stage. They cut the ribbon together, laughter bubbling between them. Then, before the cheering died down, Jide dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped. He held out a small velvet box. Chinyere Okafor. Not as part of a contract, not for business, not for show. "Just me, Jide, asking you to be my wife, for real this time." Chi-Chi's hands flew to her mouth. Tears spilled freely as she nodded, her voice breaking. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Hashtags trended within minutes. Hashtag RealVows. Hashtag Port Harcourt Power Couple. Hashtag Chinyere Forever. As Jide slipped the ring on her finger, Chi-Chi realized her journey had come full circle. She had entered this world as a fake bride, bound by contract. But today, standing hand in hand with a man who had once been a stranger, she wasn't acting anymore. This was real. This was love. And Port Harcourt would never forget the day its billionaire and its daughter from D-Line became the city's true power couple. The end.